Well, it's about that time again. It's freezing at night, snows in the forecast. Time to take down our camp in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The average snowfall up here is astronomical. A wall tent can't possibly make it through the winter unless you were living in it and could keep it clear every day. So, as heartbreaking as it is, this is the time of year to break camp. We've got a lot to do. What a beautiful day to do it, though. Not only do we need to get the tent down, but I have to reinforce that outhouse roof. Now, it's hard to believe, but when I look back on it, Brooke and I have spent so much time living in a wall tent. Me personally, I think I'm over 16 months out of my life. That's a year and 4 months living in a wall tent. While we've built other projects, while we built our last log cabin in Alaska. And even in Alaska, you can't leave a wall tent up over the winter. Trust me on this, because I've had one collapse twice. The first time I put it back together, the second time it wasn't going to come back together. And in Alaska, contrary to what you might think, the snowfall is a fraction of what it would be here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Brooke bought this old furniture from a Civil War reenactor, and it's fascinating stuff. Everything folds down flat. It's all held together with pegs. It's quite sturdy. It's pretty amazing when you can take the entire camp and load it into a short bed pickup. And a big part of that is just this furniture and the minimal amount of space that it takes up. Very useful. I'd personally never seen anything like it before she bought it. The utility of it, it's pretty obvious as soon as you start taking it apart, folding it up. Doesn't take up hardly any space in the truck. One of the things that's on the books for the future is a woodshed. We have quite a lot of wood. We have a few trees that need to be cut out. We just need a place to put it. Hey, here's a question somebody's going to ask. What do you do with the well in the wintertime? Well, with that ball valve, we keep the prime all summer. And then this time of year, we need to open that valve and lift the handle on the pump. This will allow air into the system, and it lets the water column drop down the pipe. It basically takes the prime out of the pump, and all the waters drop back down into the aquifer. What this will do is that it'll keep the pump from freezing and the pipe from freezing. We'll just have to reprime it in the spring when we come back. Now, one of the beautiful things about a wall tent is it's basically a cabin in a box. You buy a wall tent, you have a place to put it up, and it's pretty much as good as having a cabin. Now, this cedar chest is very valuable. It's a really valuable piece of equipment. Whenever we're not at camp, we put all of our bedding and blankets and pillows in this chest, and it keeps the squirrels and the chipmunks from tearing it all up. About this time in the process, It looks like a tornado went through here. We got stuff pretty much everywhere. If you take a look in the back of the truck here, you can see all that, the bed and the table and the 2 benches, and how small of an area they stack into. Very handy. Now it's time for me to fix that outhouse roof. This country gets snow by the yard, and that roof only has 1 center support that holds it up. So I'm going to put 2 more in. I bought this 2x4 at the closest town, and it's without doubt the most expensive 2x4 I've ever bought in my life, and I've bought a lot of 2x4s. I think this thing cost me $8. Having a place out in the middle of nowhere is one thing, but shopping out in the middle of nowhere, well, I'm all for supporting local business, but I'll never buy another $8 2x4. It's a nice day to work out here. One of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to take down a wall tent in the rain. And the weather forecast for the next few days is calling for a lot of rain. And then within the next week, it's calling for snow. So getting the outhouse roof fixed, getting the wall tent taken down in decent weather, those are 2 really important things. If you took down the tent and it was wet, you'd have to put it right back up and let it dry out. So we want to take the tent down when it's as dry as possible. When it comes to this outhouse roof, well, a couple pieces of polycarbonate with 5 feet of snow on top and 1 brace in the middle, I just don't think that's going to work. So I'm going to put 2 more braces in here, and then I think we're going to be just fine. Now I think that's going to do it. That's much better. I wonder if this guy agrees. Who knows? Bug never says much. Now I got to move on to the shower. The shower is pretty much going to take care of itself, with the exception of the pump. I just have to pull the hose off and make sure that the pump housing is free of water. Brooke and I have spent quite a bit of time working on our own sides of the same project, but now we're almost to the point we can start working together and getting the tent down. Now a lot of this gear folds flat, but not the tent. It's going to look like a giant burrito sitting on top of all this flat gear. Now when it comes to taking the tent down, probably the top priority is just to keep it as clean as possible. We can't get these wet leaves off this tarp, so we're going to use the inside of the tarp to fold the whole tent up into. And we want to keep the inside of the canvas all on the inside and not roll it up so the outside canvas and the inside canvas touch. We're just trying to keep it clean. Best thing about a setup like this is anybody can afford this. Anybody can. With a couple acres of cheap property in a remote part of the country, we didn't spend a lot on the land. And the tent, it's an expensive tent, but it's cheaper than a cabin. I've been driving the same car for 11 years. And I don't think I've ever spent more than $2,000 on a truck. It all comes down to priorities. If you have to have a brand new vehicle, if you have to have a $300,000 house. You know, makes a lot of other things kind of unaffordable. It's all priorities, I suppose. But when it comes to a place like this, what we wanted is we wanted somewhere that was quiet. And a place that's quiet is always going to be a place where there's very few people. And in areas where there are very few people, a lot of times the real estate's pretty affordable. Maybe it's not conducive to living year-round. Maybe it's too remote to commute to a job. But I think all in all, if somebody made this kind of thing a priority, they could make it happen. Now we're in the final leg of the process. Now that the tent is down and the tent is being rolled up, now we can get all the bits and pieces of the internal frame taken apart, loaded up, and we're getting real close to being done. At that point, we'll have that all-weather carpet that's on the bottom and the tarp that's underneath of it. We'll get that all swept off, get that rolled up. And then the next step from there is to head to St. Ignace and hit Clyde's Drive-In for a big sloppy cheeseburger. This is the part of the process where it starts to get tricky. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and everything's got to go. Everything that we want during the winter anyway. Everything that we want to keep out of the snow.
Are you about ready for the tent?
Brooke is up there trying to fit the pieces in as best as we can, so we have room for the tent, because the tent is the most important thing. Now that the tent's on the truck, we're to a point where we've won. We're about wrapped up. Now it's time to strap it all down and head on out. And just like that, a wonderful, warm, cozy camp is turned back into a piece of wild country. And it's going to be like this for another 6 months. This part of the world is locked in by 6 feet of snow through the wintertime. And we probably won't be back until spring. Unless we snowmobile in sometime in the winter. We'll see. We also have our property in Alaska we've got to get back to this summer. We're going to leave this camp the way we found it. Nice and quiet. Well, that's it for this year. We got quite a lot done on the property, but we didn't get as far as we wanted. I guess you hardly ever do, right? So next year we'll take another crack at it, and hopefully we can get a cabin in. Maybe we'll have another project to do that we'll move on to. Who knows? Hard to say. Every year brings something different, and you kind of just got to roll with it. This year we thought we'd have a little more time to build here, and it just didn't work out that way. But it's still just as good to be here without a cabin as it probably would be if we had one. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us as we take down the tent. My name's Dave Whipple, and you've been watching Bush Radical. And be radical, eh? See you soon.